Hello, everybody. My name is Yaman, and I provide daily updates on Tesla, markets, and technology. Let's get started. Quick plug before we dive in. I just published a new Seeking Alpha piece, Tesla's Share Problem, Losing at Home and Abroad. I walk through why China sales are sliding even after the Model Y refresh, August down 10% year over year, and how BYD and Xiaomi are eating into share, and why Tesla's US EV share is at an 8-year low, pointing to competition more than macro. I also cover stalled FSD robotics, deliverables, and leadership churn risks. Link is in the description and pinned. Read it and tell me where you agree or push back. Markets are up today. Dow Jones is up 1.3%. Nasdaq is up 0.7%. S&P 500 is up 0.8%. Russell 2000 is up 1.5%. We're going to talk about the CPI data that came out and initial claims data. Oil prices are down 2%. Yields are down a couple basis points. Wall Street hits record highs as rate cut bets intact after inflation data. Wall Street's main indices hit intraday record highs on Thursday, boosted by gains across sectors, after the latest inflation data did little to alter market expectations of interest rate cuts by the Federal Reserve. U.S. consumer prices rose more than expected in August, and the annual increase in inflation was the largest in 7 months. The Fed is widely expected to cut rates by at least 25 basis points next week, a move that was largely priced in after a series of bleak labor market data sets and Wednesday's cooler than expected producer inflation reading. However, pricing now reflects bets on 3 straight quarter point cuts, one at each meeting left this year. In a separate reading, initial jobless claims for the week ended September 6 stood at 263,000 at a near 4-year high. Everything that we seem to be getting is another nail in the coffin, suggesting that the Fed will cut in September, said a global head of asset allocation research at Invesco. Tesla was up 4%. Micron gained 10% after Citigroup raised its price target on the memory chip maker. The Philadelphia SE Semiconductor Index rose 1%, up for the 6th straight session. Let's go on to Trump. Trump tariffs, live updates. Swiss to propose U.S. gold refinery. Mexico lifts China tariffs to 50%. Switzerland is proposing that its gold industry builds a refinery in the U.S. or increase its processing capacity. They're in a bid to reduce U.S. tariffs, according to Reuters. President Trump slapped 39% tariffs on Swiss imports last month. Christoph Wild, president of Swiss Precious Metals Association, ASFCMP, suggested the industry should explore ways to reduce the country's trade deficit with the U.S. Meanwhile, in a move some say is to appease Trump, Mexico said on Wednesday it will raise tariffs on automobiles from China and other Asian countries to 50%. The economy minister said tariffs will rise on textiles, steel, cars, or other goods, affecting $52 billion in imports. Elsewhere, Trump has requested that the EU impose 100% tariffs on India and China, pressure Russia over its war in Ukraine, the Financial Times reported. At the same time, Trump said the US and India have agreed to resume trade negotiations after weeks of back and forth over India's purchase of Russian oil. Also, the Supreme Court said Tuesday it would quickly review a high-stakes legal challenge to President Trump's tariffs, setting up a resolution as early as this fall. The High Court put the case on track for oral agreements in early November. That puts the case on an unusually quick track to resolution. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has warned in recent days that the U.S. would have refund around half the trade tariff revenue it has collected in the Supreme Court rules the president overstepped his authority, which has been determination of a federal appeals court and the Court of International Trade. Trump has suggested that the U.S. may have to unwind existing trade deals, including with the European Union, Japan, and South Korea, if the Supreme Court doesn't uphold his tariffs. The tariffs at stake are the sweeping reciprocal country-specific duties Trump has outlined in various steps this year. Those duties range from 10 to 50%. Trump has used a 1977 law known as IEEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, to justify imposing the tariffs. The appeals court allowed the tariffs to stay in place while the case moves toward legal process. Let's move on to these company-specific moves. Opendoor stock soars more than 55% as Shopify CEO hired to lead company. Opendoor stock jumped more than 55% shortly after Thursday's opening bell on news that the company has hired Shopify's chief operating officer as the real estate platform's new chief executive. The company announced Wednesday night that Shopify COO Kaz Nayatian will join the beleaguered iBuyer as CEO, stepping into the replace the hole left by the prior CEO Kerry Wheeler. The company also named co-founder Keith Robos as chairman of the board and reappointed to the board the co-founder Eric Wu, who left Opendoor in 2022 to lead Marketplace. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Literally, there was only one choice for the job. Kaz, I'm thrilled that he will be serving as CEO of Opendoor, Robo said. He is a proven executive with a founder's brain. He is the right leader to unlock Opendoor's unique data and assets. Let's move on. Sticky inflation report, unlikely to keep Fed off course for rate cut next week. A stickier inflation report isn't likely to kick the Federal Reserve off course for an interest rate cut next week, but it is likely to prevent the central bank from making a jumbo cut of a half a percentage point. The CPI showed core prices, excluding volatile food and energy prices, rose 3.1% for the month of August, in line with expectations and holding the same level as July. Month-over-month inflation also held a steady at 0.3%. I think if you carried out the two decimals, I think it was all above expectations, actually. On a headline basis, inflation rose 2.9% in August, compared with 2.7% in July, so rising. Month over month was slightly hotter than expected at 0.4%. There you go, compared with expectations for 0.3%. Despite a slightly firmer gain in the core CPI in August, amid broad increases in goods, services, and shelter prices, there was not much for the FOMC to fret about. But what else is there? Capital economics economist Stephen Brown said, that cements the case for a 25 basis point cut next week rather than providing any support for a larger 50 basis point move. The new reading on consumer prices comes after a report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics released on Wednesday showed wholesale prices unexpectedly dropped in August and firms took a hit to their margins, implying that businesses are eating tariffs rather than passing them on to consumers. At the same time, data on the jobs market shows softening. Thursday's initial jobless claims, a real-time indicator of the job market, jumped to 263,000, the highest level in 4 years. At the latest government jobs report showed the economy added 22,000 jobs in August, weaker than the 75,000 economists expected, with the unemployment rate rising to 4.3% from 4.2%. There's a bit of an asterisk to this number. I don't think it's being reported enough, is that this is mostly due to seasonal adjustments. If you look at the unseasonal, like seasonally unadjusted data, it's week over week is pretty flat. And much of the jump is attributed to the one state, Texas, where there was some oil-related layoffs last week. So it's a very much a one-off type of thing. I think the Fed will look through that. Job growth for June was revised into negative territory to negative 13,000 jobs. July showed below-trend growth compared with the past year, marking 3 months of slowing job growth. The inflation data on Thursday was the last major data point before the Fed's meeting cut Tuesday and Wednesday. Markets are pricing in near certainty for a 25 basis point rate cut. Fed Chair Powell opened the door to lowering rates at the end of August in a speech in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, noting that the balance of risks appear to be shifting, which may warrant adjusting our policy stance. He said, former Kansas Fed President Esther George said she thinks the job market data since Powell's speech corroborates the sense that the labor market is weakening. It's softer maybe than we even thought over the past few months or so, George said in an interview. I don't think I've heard anyone try to dissuade markets that the 25 basis point cut isn't coming, so I expect they will cut rates. Again, I want to reiterate here, there's still a 10 to 20% chance of a 50 basis point cut priced into the markets. And people are pointing to this figure, 263,000 initial claims from last. But note that this is seasonally adjusted figure. If you look at the unadjusted figures, week over week, they're pretty flat and still very expansionary. And on top of that, much of the increase is coming from Texas. In one state. It's not a national phenomenon. In Texas, there were a couple of large companies laying people off, like Halliburton and ConocoPhillips. So I think the Fed will look through that, and that's due to the low oil prices, which is actually pretty stimulative to the economy. So beef prices are spiking, but protein-obsessed shoppers keep coming back. Beef prices have soared 14% the past year, yet Americans can't get enough of the red meat. The hikes can be explained by relentless demand and tight supply, with total U.S. cattle inventory at a 75-year low. Beef and veal costs overall were up 2.7% between July and August. Government inflation data out Thursday showed uncooked ground beef prices have risen 13% since August 2024, while uncooked beef steaks have spiked 17%, hitting an average of $12.22 a pound. Even with high prices, consumer demand for beef has been remarkably resilient, said Maria Ortez, an agribusiness and entrepreneurship professor at Virginia Tech. After all, there is something of a protein boom afoot in the US, with many Americans taking weight loss drugs that lead them to eat less and pursue protein rich meals. So far, high prices in the store haven't stopped the large majority of beef buyers, Ortez said. Brian Ernest, the lead animal protein economist at CoBank Knowledge Exchange Research Division, said in a report last month that high demand may be a key driver of record high beef prices. Consumers today have access to far higher quality beef at the grocery store than they did just a few decades ago, and they're taking advantage. Retail per capita beef consumption could be 60 pounds this year, Ernest said. I don't see anything really kind of slowing down this exceptional demand of animal protein in general, Ernest told Yahoo Finance. As for why the supply of cattle is severely constrained, ranchers are being incentivized to quickly sell their product to capitalize on high prices, Ortez said. There are also fewer reasons to hang on to cattle, with droughts making it more difficult to feed animals affordably and high interest rates keeping ranchers from accessing the capital to rebuild their herds. Ortez said a rancher in Texas this week told him they would love to grow their herd, but the water is not there, the feed prices are high, and the interest rates are so high, so I can't afford. Call it a perfect storm, Ortez said. On the other hand, the average rate of a 30-year mortgage fell to 6.35% this week. Freddie Mac says its lowest level in nearly a decade. 6.35%. I think after today, they're headed down a little bit more. Apple analyst sentiment hits 5-year low after 2 downgrades. Apple Inc. was hit by a pair of downgrades on Thursday in the latest sign of caution toward the iPhone maker, which has sharply underperformed its large cap tech peers this year. With the downgrades, Apple's recommendation consensus, a proxy for the ratio of buy, hold, and sell ratings, has dropped to 3.9 out of 5, its lowest since early 2020, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. Just 55% of the analysts tracked by Bloomberg recommend buying the stock, which is extremely low among mega caps. Nvidia, Microsoft, and Amazon, for instance, all have ratios above 90%. D.A. Davidson cut the stock to neutral from buy, a move that follows product announcements earlier this week that failed to assuage concerns about the company's position with AI. While we were initially excited about the prospects of Apple's role in the AI ecosystem and potential major upgrade cycle, it has become clear to us that neither of those are likely to come to fruition in the near term, wrote the analyst. The new products, including a thinner iPhone, left us uninspired, he wrote. Until they can redefine their current products and develop compelling new ones, we believe growth will remain constrained under the status quo. Despite the year-to-date weakness, Apple has jumped more than 30% off an April low amid easing concerns about the impact of tariffs. ECB governors eye December as next chance for any rate cut. According to sources, ECB policymakers are considering a potential interest rate cut in December to mitigate the impact of U.S. tariffs on the Eurozone economy, while the ECB left rates unchanged. The debate on a rate cut is ongoing, with the December meeting seen as the most realistic timeframe for a decision. And finally, Figure CEO on the IPO, we will transform investing by using the blockchain. Figure Technology Solutions, a blockchain platform for lending, trading, and investing, raised $787 million in its IPO. The company, co-founded by Mike Cagney, aims to transform investing by reducing transaction priorities from 7 to 2 using blockchain technology. Again, finally, I published my article on Tesla. There's a share problem, losing at home and abroad. I walk through why China sales are sliding even after the Model Y refresh, August being down 10% year over year, how BYD and Xiaomi are eating into the share, and why Tesla's US EV share is an 8-year low, pointing to competition more than macro. I also covered the stalled FSD and robotics deliverables and leadership churn risks. Link is in the description of this video and pinned on my X profile. Read it and tell me where you agree or push back. On that note, thank you very much, everybody, and I will chat with you all tomorrow. Take care.